Everybody, welcome to the RotoWire MLB podcast. Today is Thursday. That is May 20th. Jeff Erickson here. And we are talking all things Angel. In fact, we're titling this Send Me an Angel. Send me Jock Thompson is what I said instead. And so I've got Jock Thompson here joining us. Jock is from Baseball HQ. We've been friends for a long time. Jock's been playing fantasy baseball for a long time with HQ for a long while. And I'm really glad to have him on. Jock, how you doing?
Jeff, really good to be here. It has been a while.
Yeah, it's really cool that you could do this, and I appreciate your expertise on this. Been a very pertinent week in the news for the Angels with the Trout injury, Itani doing Itani things. Figured, well, this is a good time as any. So let's jump right into it, though. The other big thing in the news is that we have another no-hitter, another day, another no-hitter. This time, Corey Kluber no-hitting the Rangers. Quite a performance, especially considering where he was a year ago. Last 2 years, only threw one inning last year. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of it, but as a Kluber owner, before he left Cleveland for his best years, really, I was surprised by this. I thought he might bounce back this year, but throwing a no-hitter, even against the Rangers. The Rangers offense hasn't been as bad as I thought they'd be out of the gate, but they pretty much played above their heads. So not surprising in the grand scheme of things. This was a no-hit team.
Right. Exactly. And, it's really wild to see. The day before we saw the no-hitter against the Mariners. The Mariners been no-hit twice. The Rangers been no-hit twice. Cleveland's been no-hit twice. It's odd. And 5 of the 6 have been have been road no-hitters too. Rodon's the only one who did it at home. Is there something about those ballparks, maybe the ballparks, the way the ball is being stored there, that is depressing hitting?
That is a really good question. I haven't looked at that. I try to focus on if I'm doing pitching matchups. Obviously, I try to focus on some of these offenses, and some of these offenses that have been no hit are not very good. Seattle, I just wrote a piece at Baseball HQ just last night where I touched on their offensive difficulties, and they've been pretty bad. So I think that's one of the keys.
Yeah, they're hitting 198 now. It's an homage to Mario Mendoza. And to the line, because he's a former Mariner, so they had to go ahead and go with that. Interesting to see that happening in the AL West. Wild varying performances in the West, that's for sure. 2 really putrid offenses in Texas and Seattle, that's for sure.
Yeah, and 2 stadiums that or two ballparks that are pitching friendly for the most part. Texas's stadium, we're still getting the early returns on that, but so far not a lot of offense there.
So on your piece on the Mariners, dig into it a little bit more. Tell me, what did you conclude? What did you highlight there?
Well, it was a Playing Time Tomorrow piece, and basically what I was looking for was, is there any hope down the road? Is there something that fantasy managers can take advantage of that might be 2-3 weeks away? And I looked at the injuries to Tyler France and Evan White, and you think, well, that might have something to do with it. You think no, because they weren't doing anything before this drought started. And I looked in the minors, and I'm sure you know this by now, but Taylor Trammell is just red hot off down there. I think he's something like 16 for 26 or something like that. And in his first 26 at bats, get this, if you haven't seized on this yet, 4 strikeouts. This is a guy who struck out 50% of the time.
That's so wild.
League level. It makes you wonder about the difference between whether it's a small sample or just the difference between pitching and AAA. I got more questions than I did answers out of that one, but just a lot of interesting stuff.
Is there maybe like something with the hitting background in Seattle? Because this isn't the first year that there's been like they've had no hitters. I think 3 seasons, 3 of the last 4 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. They had the Philip Umber perfect game back a while back. King Felix had his one. Paxton had one there. Iwakuma had one. They've had a lot of no hitters in Seattle.
Yeah, it's a really good point. A really good question. I'm not sure, frankly, it's the only ballpark I've never been to on the West Coast, and it's one I want to get to. I'm hopeful to get to it sometime this year or next year, but it's something I'm going to check out.
Yeah, we got there 17 years ago. So Kim, it was back in May, and Kim was pregnant with my older daughter Allie, who is 16 now. So 17 years ago, and That was our yeah, and that was our last. Yeah, time flies. It totally does. That was our last like pre-kid vacation was Seattle, and I love the ballpark. It's a sea of green you walk into. Good beer on tap, a lot of things like that. I know you would appreciate that with me. But it's easy on the eyes as a fan. I wonder if as a hitter it's a little different, perhaps. Maybe the angle of the sun. I don't know. Just spitballing here, but it has never been a great hitter's ballpark. They've had some good hitters in there, but it's not like the Kingdom, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they've moved the fences in too to accommodate hitting because it has been such a pitcher's park over the years. I think they moved the fences in 2 or 3 years ago. I'm sure it's had a positive impact for hitters, but I think it's still kind of regarded as a pitcher's park.
Yeah, and quietly they installed a humidor there last year. Didn't really announce it. Just like you really have to dig to find what teams have the humidor. But in Seattle, it's supposed to actually be a positive. That's the funny thing. A humidor is just to try to make the humidity level with other ballparks. And for whatever, in this case, I think they're trying to dehumidify a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Moving on. Other news. So it's kind of a week of bounce back for pitchers. We saw Luis Castillo have a really nice outing earlier in the week, 11 strikeouts. Yesterday, Lucas Giolito, 11 strikeouts, 8 innings. I saw a good piece in The Athletic talking how he changed his warm-up or his bullpen day, not his warm-up, but his bullpen day routine, and it paid dividends.
Yeah, Giolito's been one of those guys. He hasn't been across the board bad all year. He's been up and down. His control hasn't been terrific.
Right.
But like Texas, ditto the Twins. The Twins aren't as awful an offensive team as Texas is, but they haven't been great versus right-handers. They haven't been very consistent at all since Buxton hit the IL. So it's not surprising that Giolito bounced back against them. I expect him to get a little more consistent when the weather warms up and he gets his bearings.
Yeah, and one of the things they mentioned is he wasn't having much success with the slider because he wasn't getting the break that he wanted out of it. And part of it was, even though he doesn't throw in games, he had scrap throwing the curveball even in his bullpen sessions, and that curveball begat better results on his slider, which I found was pretty interesting. And that's little inside baseball that you don't know from looking at Savant. You don't know from looking there, but that's really good coaching. That's development.
That's right. Indeed, it is.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's lost. And that's probably one of the things that you can separate from some organizations. Some do a really good job of developing pitchers. And others struggle a little bit there. And I'm not going to pick on your Angels, but your Angels.
Oh my goodness, yeah, we've got some things to talk about there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that part. I'm actually as a Reds fan. This week against the Giants is going very poorly, but I liked it. I like the pitching coach. I like the pitching program they have there. I think they're doing a good job of developing pitchers. So there's one thing to be optimistic about them, but I think development is the big thing that we overlook a lot when we deal with front offices, dealing with coaching staffs.
The Reds have done a very good job recently in developing pitchers. And yeah, they've been up and down a little bit in terms of their pitching. And last year they were great. This year they're a little more volatile, but you see guys that you never thought were going to amount to much and guys coming over from other teams that seem to be doing a lot better on the Reds.
Yep. That's right. And the Astros have been good about that in the past, just, hey, trade with the Pirates, improve.
Yeah. Astros have done, I've written about the Astros recently too. They've done a really good job developing rotation depth that is major league ready right now. They're actually going to have a problem in a few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When Odorizzi's up to full speed, when they, you get everybody back. What do you do with Luis Garcia? What do you do with, with even Christian Javier? Who in many rotations, he'd be firmly established, but they've got options.
Yep. Indeed. So. They're going to start. Apparently, they're going to start Tyler Ivey coming up this Friday for his MLB debut, which kind of surprised me because they've got a couple of off days. Yeah, they had who was it who just hit the IL? Urquidy, they didn't need a fifth starter until the end of May. But they're going to have Ivey make his IL on Friday or his debut on Friday, and that to me is almost indicative of that embarrassment of riches we're kind of talking about right now.
Right. But as we've seen year after year, you can never have too much depth. Look at the Dodgers this year and how much attrition they're going through. and they're just trying to get through it right now.
Well, whoever thought this year was going to happen injury-wise? I mean, good Lord. That's a whole show into itself, too. I'm sure you've had some of those.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And the thing is, the thing that's amazing to me is we expected it on the pitching side. At least I expected on the pitching side. I saw a lot of hype. I didn't see as much about on the hitting side. How are we going to manage hitters? How, beware of getting enough at bats. We were talking a lot about beware of not getting enough innings from our pitchers, but I didn't see the analog for the hitting side of things.
Yeah, it's been a strange year.
Yeah, it really has. And that is going to lead us to a segue on Fernando Tatis, who's had a strange year in itself, had an injury, has had a COVID situation, jogged one time during his COVID, area there where he was just keeping to himself for 10 days. That's what he said. He jogged once. It was 4 for 4 yesterday with the homer, of course, naturally.
Yeah, I was watching that game. Fernando Tatis, I probably told you this story. He's the best player I've ever seen in a spring training game that had never played a major league game when I saw him. I watched him back in 2018. It was his first camp, fresh off of low A. I saw him go 4 for 4 against the White Sox. He just dominated the field with his presence and personality. You knew you were in the presence of about to be greatness. And of course, I watched him yesterday. I have him on a couple of my keeper league teams. But that day 3 years ago was just one of those fun days you don't forget. He's a great player.
Isn't it awesome though when you go to spring training or the fall league and you see these guys and you can just tell they have it?
Yes, all the time. And you see these guys and maybe it doesn't happen for a few years. And we're going to talk about Jared Walsh in a few minutes. I'll tell you a funny story about him as well. But it's a blast seeing these guys and checking them out. And if you haven't been to spring training or first pitch Arizona again, hopefully we get that going again this coming October. You're missing out. If you're a baseball fan, you really ought to catch it.
That's great. And I know you make the trip every year, both in the spring and the fall. The funny thing is all these trips to Arizona I've made, I've never once seen a game in Tempe. I've never once seen the Angels facility. It's pretty wild, but and now have they updated the facilities like everybody else there? Or are they still kind of running old school?
They have, but you're dealing with a real small footprint there. There's only so much they can do with that. They've made some upgrades. The concourses are still very narrow. It's a cozy stadium. It's good sight lines. I mean, you're right on top of the action all the time. The parking's pretty bad. It's tough getting in and out if you don't know what you're doing. And the ticket price as well. They're the Angels, so you get what you expect. So,
go there for fall league. Don't go there in spring training, basically.
Exactly.
Is what I'm getting from this there. But
yeah, really.
Yeah. But we did see Mike Trout in the fall league. So that was nice. See the elite prospects then. So it's worth it to go then. Plus, the fall league's great because you're there. You sit anywhere. You're there with 100 of your closest friends and some scouts, and that's about it.
Indeed. The year we saw Mike Trout, it was kind of funny. It was probably the worst performance any of us have seen Mike Trout put on.
He was clearly burned out. He was clearly burned out. I remember that vividly.
Yep. He had raced through several levels. He'd come up from Double-A. He wasn't awful. He hit a bunch of home runs, but you could tell during the fall league. He went to the fall league after coming to the Angels.
Right.
He was there for almost 2 months, but he left the fall league early, and he could tell he really just wanted to go home, which I get completely.
Yeah, that's right. Can't blame him. More Trout talk in a second. But first, a note from our sponsors. All right. Those of you who are streaming with us, you missed that note, but it's just an audio note for our podcasters there a little bit. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Fire us your Angels questions. It's Angels time here. If you are streaming with us, this is the time to start firing away. I see, a few people in the room right now. Fire away those questions. Happy to hit them up right now. Let's start off on the Trout side of things here. I mean, that's the big news of the week. I had that quad injury on Monday, not quad, calf injury on Monday. And not the first time he's had this injury, although the severity of it's way worse this time.
Yeah, what can you say about a Trout injury, particularly early in the year after a poor start? He's going to be gone for 6 to 8 weeks. This is pretty lethal, I think, to any slim hopes the Angels may have had. Minus injuries at best, this was going to be an offensive club that this was going to be a team that bludgeoned teams offensively and hope their pitching improved during the season. Without Trout early on, that equation seems gone. Maybe if they'd lost him for a month later in the season and Adele and Marsh were more ready than they are now, okay, but that's not what's happened here.
No, it isn't. And that's the part of the big problem for them is the supporting cast around them. And I know we'll talk about some of these guys, but you're expecting, David Fletcher, for instance, having a horrible year, awful year, expected to be a good table setter, get on base a lot, and that's not happening. You look up and down the lineup. Rendon's had 2 injuries. That hurts a lot. I mean, it hurts.
Yep. Yeah, Fletcher's patience is down. He's not walking enough. He's not hitting enough. The hits aren't dropping. It's funny. You watch Fletcher play, and I've watched him for 2 years, and I'm appreciative of his skills. Orange County kid, you can't not like him. But you always wondered whether his batting average was going to stay where it was. The power is strictly gap. I was hoping there might be a little more to keep the defense honest. He goes line to line, but they seem to be getting the better of him right now.
Yeah, they do. Back to Trout. It's 2022 draft. Trout's fully recovered. Didn't have any setbacks. We'll just speculate. We'll stipulate to that. Where are you drafting him? How high does he go overall for you?
What is he? He's 30 now, isn't he? Or he's closing in on 30, something like that. These injuries scare me a little bit. When he's healthy, he's still, if not the best, one of the best hitters around. I'm still drafting him top 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'm probably a little lower. I mean, the thing is, and it depends on the format too, obviously. Like Tout Wars, you have OBP, you're going to bump him a little higher. Plus, it's a standalone league, no overall contest. That he doesn't run won't hurt you as much. He is currently 29, by the way, but he does turn 30 this year in August. I think in a but the thing that the comp that scares me is, and I keep thinking Ken Griffey Jr. He kept on having recurring leg injuries with the Reds, and he's awesome when he's fully healthy, but he's the periods of time when he's fully healthy seem to be shorter. That's the future I fear.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, I'm saying I'd draft Mike Trout 5 or 6. My being an Angel fan and a Mike Trout owner.
Right.
Hopefully, some of my keeper league fellow owners are watching this, and they have the same valuation of Mike Trout that I do. I think once I see more players play this year and have that sheet in front of me, say in November, December, I might drop him a little bit as well, because let's face it, stolen bases are you have to consider them. They're scarce, and if you can get an Acuna or a Tatis or even a Bo Bichette early, you might not do that.
Yeah, and Bo Bichette's a fun one there, that he's getting the speed. That was the thing is he going to continue to run? Is he going to run successfully? And he's been able to do that just fine. The other huge name is Shohei Itani. And the thing that was interesting about him is last night as a pitcher, he was 5 miles an hour slower than he had been all season long, if not more at times. And he said he just wasn't feeling his fastball. What does that even mean?
I don't know. Honestly, I was stunned at what I was watching last night. My wife and I were talking about it throughout the performance, because it was nothing like his previous performances, obviously, which were all about mid-high 90s velocity. At first, I thought he was just working on off-speed stuff and breaking stuff, and I saw some 93-mile-an-hour sinkers, which I thought was a little bit new. I wondered about an injury. I didn't see anything in his body language. And then you're hearing Madden say this AM, like you alluded to, he's fine. He just wasn't feeling his fastball, whatever that means. It was just so unexpected and out of the ordinary. I just don't know what to expect next, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of comes with him. You don't know what to expect with him.
Yeah.
He is there. There's no archetype. He is him. That's it. There's no one else to compare him to.
Yes. He is a fascinating player. And that's the thing that really kills me about the Angels. And I'm speaking from a fan standpoint now. You've got Trout, you've got Itani, but they're almost like circus acts on a real bad circus otherwise. It's terrible.
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating that we've seen Mike Trout play one playoff series ever.
Yeah.
And they lost to the Royals, and that was it. That's the list. Really frustrating. And And now we got this crazy breakout season from Itani. I want him to be in the home run hit contest at the All-Star game. I really want to see that in Coors Field. I just think that could be fascinating.
Yeah, indeed. That would be a blast. Let's make that happen.
Yeah. Valuing Itani right now. Let's say it's always tricky with him because there's so many different rules. You can play Tout Wars where it's the two Otanis, or you could play NFBC where you just have to decide whether to start him as a hitter or a pitcher that given week. There's only a few places where you can use them you get both and you just have to decide on that day or whatever. But I like that last option. I'm hoping to see more of that, but
I have Itani in one of those leagues. And
do you really?
Yes, it's Sportsline, and that's how they use him. And on days he pitches, actually I started him at pitcher for the first time just last night.
Of course, naturally.
Because of what happened the week before. And of course, then we got what we got. But ideally, this will work out in the second half of the season for me. I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens.
Right. I mean, you're almost always using him as a hitter. Yes. That's the thing I've noticed, because he doesn't go deep into games. You can't get a win if you're not going at least 5. And unfortunately, he hasn't really gone deep that often. I think he's only gone more than 5 once when he went 7 against Houston, the previous start. But he did, and he has just 1 win. I mean, he's got all those beautiful strikeouts, but
well, we play in an innings pitch league, and his innings pitch weren't that great either. But we also play in a strikeouts minus walks league. So until last week, it wasn't worth starting him either. It was almost even, from last week. So he's been a real roller coaster in terms of pitching, and I can't wait for the next start. It's going to be interesting.
So in that Sportsline league, is this a snake draft or is this a salary cap auction league?
This is a deep 20-team dynasty league with a team salary cap.
Okay.
So I can keep Itani for as long as I want on this. So I don't think his salary means anything right now because he's not going anywhere.
So that kind of negates my follow-up question is to try to put a value on him in a fresh powder league where you're starting anew. In that format, is he a first-round player?
In that kind of a league, he should be. You would think so, right? If you're projecting that he's going to improve as a starting pitcher, he's got to be top 25, top 30 hitter, right?
Yeah, I would think so. By the way, I was remiss in mentioning our sponsor. Our WynnBET is sponsoring this whole podcast. I was supposed to mention them at the beginning. Sorry about that. I'll do it now. If you do bet on sports and it's allowed in your state, WynnBET, you check them out. We thank them for their sponsorship. We'll have more details from them later on. Later on this podcast season. Don't have a live read for them just yet, but please check them out. I want to talk about him as a pitcher though going forward. I think it's going to be hard for him to last. The extreme velocity, these guys tend to get hurt more. He's already had 1 TJS. We saw the big drop in velocity yesterday. I think we're all kind of freaking out about that now. I still think there might be a future where he's just a hitter.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually think, and you were at the online first pitch that we did this past March. I think you tuned into at least some of that, but we had a discussion about what Saris calls Otani's reliever command, and you look at his high pitch counts, and you look at the difficulties in bringing him in and out of games as a hitter. I see a role for him as a reliever, late inning reliever, lights out. It would preserve his velocity. It would keep some of the problems he has going deep in the high pitch counts off his plate. The problem we have is that the Angels need starting pitching so badly. Mm-hmm. They're not going to let that go anytime soon, and I guess nor should they right now. The future there is going to be fascinating.
The thing is, the Tyler Skaggs thing set them back so far. It's a tragedy more for Skaggs, but it's also you see the impact that it had on the Angels. I don't want to I don't want to just think of it from Angel centric, but I mean that's huge. It's a huge setback. The fact that Andrew Heaney hasn't taken the next step up is problematic, and Quintana's been disastrous.
It goes back to that too. You got Nick Adenhart, which it was 2014, but geez, Yeah,
that's right. And even some of the guys that were good stories last year are kind of taking a step backward this year. Like for instance, sorry, I'm having a quick blank out here on the starting pitcher, but
we did get a little older, Jeff.
Yeah, I know. Thanks. Yeah, not although Alex Cobb was definitely in that way, but moving, staying in the rotation, ex-Orioles for the win. Dylan Bundy. Sorry, man, that was embarrassing. I was thinking about Bundy all the time. He's taking a step backward this year. You might be trying
to talk about Sandoval for a minute there, but that's a story too. But
yeah. So Dylan Bundy, so far this year, he's got a 6 ERA. He's 0-5 still, but a 127 WHIP is okay. You would think that's all right. He's got the strikeouts, 46 Ks in 43 innings. Is there? What's the true Dylan Bundy here?
Well, there's been some bad luck and some real poor defense involved. The Angels' defense has been one of the worst in baseball to date. Some of it had to do with putting Trout Jared Walsh in right field. Some of it had to do with losing Rendon at third base for so much of the year. And these other guys they just haven't stepped up. I mean, the bottom line is even in center field. I mean, Brandon Marsh is already their best defensive center fielder, so his bat just has to become ready. But I don't think Bundy was as good as he was last year. I don't think he's as bad as he is this year. I think he's had some bad luck and some bad glove behind him.
So if you're, is he someone, what would you, where would you value him? Like what other pitchers would you value him comparatively to? I mean, he's got to be a little bit of a drop off from where he was drafted, but I still think you could go get a good buying opportunity there. Yeah,
I do too. I'm not sure who I'd compare him to. That's the interesting part about the way I play Roto. I don't have to understand the entire pitching universe. It's just more my team and the guys that I'm trying to target. I think Bundy is a good number 3, starter. I don't think he's a number 2 like some people thought after last year. Maybe I think he's better than a back end. That's kind of where I am on Bundy.
So I often use the NFBC as a proxy. So I'm going to give you a couple of pitchers whose ADP was similar to his. Obviously, you'd rather take Kevin Gausman over Bundy at this point in time. I think that verdict has been reached. How about Pablo Lopez?
Oh, that's good. I like Pablo Lopez. I like him a lot. I don't know. I think Pablo Lopez is a better pitcher than Dylan Bundy, at least by a pick.
I think so too. I'm trying to find an AL pitcher to make it bet because it's almost all NL pitchers that are all around him here to try to find a good comp. Urquidy's hurt. How about our guy Corey Kluber? Just threw a no-hitter. He was drafted a little bit later than Dylan Bundy. Who'd you rather have the rest of the year? Bundy or
Kluber? Just out of team context.
Yeah,
team context is really important here. I think.
I agree. Aaron Savali or Dylan Bundy?
That's tougher. That's a toss-up. I think. Okay. I'm not a Cleveland fan right now, although defensively they're probably better than the Angels.
Yeah, and defense matters a lot. I mean, you lose Simmons, and you have a different shortstop now. That's also part of it too. Although Iglesias, I mean, he's a good defensive shortstop.
Iglesias is pretty good defender.
Yeah. He's fine. Yep. But yeah, I'll do one more, and then we'll move on. Frankie Montas or Dylan Bundy?
Talking about a guy who still has, maybe not. Montas has been around for a while. Yeah, I don't know if my opinion matters on that one, at all. I don't know. You're talking about guys that are in the middle of the pack, and who knows how they'll do.
Okay, well, we'll move on. Let's look at other pitchers in this rotation. Are we maybe a little? Is there anybody that we're missing out on some upside? Is Alex Cobb got a little bit of extra upside? Is there any other starting pitcher either currently in the rotation or maybe is close to getting called up?
I still think Patrick Sandoval with his swing and miss and his ground ball rate has upside, but he keeps missing over the heart of the plate and he keeps giving up home runs. I don't know when that's going to appear. I just don't know. It's going to be painful and it's not immediate.
Yeah. Griffin Canning, what do you think about him?
You know what? He's a guy I'm surprisingly more optimistic about than a lot of people. I think there's another guy who's been hit with a lot of poor defense and a lot of bad luck. And the starts that I've seen him, some really awful umpiring, although it's hard to make an excuse on that because there's been just tons of that, throughout the league. Canning has that elbow thing still hanging over his head, but boy, he's, to my eye, he's looked a lot better this year than he has in recent years.
I'd agree. I've got him rostered in a couple places, and I still think that there's a chance of him. His ceiling is lower than it was for me than when he first came up. I was pretty excited, but because of the elbow, you have to kind of lower that a little bit there. The risk is obviously there too. It was a big blow for them to lose Chris Rodriguez too. I know he's pitching in relief, like multi-inning stints, but that was a guy I was getting excited about. Seeing him go down really hurt.
Yeah, he wasn't going to start this year. I mean, he hadn't pitched a lot of innings in recent years, and the back issues were there. But he was going to pitch. He was going to put bulk innings in relief, and he was doing a heck of a job. And I hope this isn't a long-term thing because he probably has more talent than any MLB-ready pitcher that the Angels have right now, with aside from maybe Itani.
Yeah. Let's move away from the rotation and go back to the bats. We spent a lot of time talking about Trout. Currently, they're rolling out an outfield of Upton, Lagares, and Taylor Ward. And that's in part, and Lagares is a little banged up in his own right, though he's back in there today. But when are we going to see the future, Jock? When are we going to see Joe Adell? When are we going to see Brandon Marsh?
Okay, first off, Taylor Ward made his first center field start professionally he ever made the other night.
Yeah.
And I was stunned. I mean, it's like Joe Madden's going to Joe Madden. But I'm just even that just, I mean, it just boggles my mind. I'm kind of a fan of Ward's tools. My eyes say that there may be more here than he's shown so far. He's athletic. He's got good speed, arm, good off-field power, plate patience. But he's 27. He still has too much swing and miss, and it hasn't translated yet. And forget center field. He's really not, despite the arm, he's not a good outfielder. This is a guy who's moved from catcher to third base to outfield corner and now center field, major league level. And it's just
put him at shortstop next. Let's forget about this. Exactly. We'll go the opposite of the spectrum. Usually you go down and you keep going down as you get older, but no, let's keep promoting him higher. Why not?
This is such a reflection of the organization, in my opinion, and it's not good. I don't think this organization's done him any favors, and they may have wrecked him. So with regard to Adell and Marsh, I mean, they're going to come up whenever Artie says they can come up. I mean, Perry Manaison may have some input here, but it's going to be interesting. I don't think they're going to come up anytime this month or anytime soon. I don't know if you've looked at their early numbers in AAA, but they're not doing awful. Adell has hit a bunch of home runs, but they're striking out a ton again. And I don't know how to calibrate this strikeout thing. Between AAA and the majors.
Well, especially Adell. The reports on him, he's got a lot of, it was like a 37% strikeout rate when our last note had him. So I could see why he's not imminent. I thought Marsh was a little bit stronger, but, Marsh has also had the injury in spring training too.
Right.
So
that's right.
I get that.
Yeah, and Marsh is more inexperienced even than Adell is. I mean, he got time at AA. He's had no AAA time yet. I hope the Angels are a little bit gun shy with what happened to Adell last year. I was not in favor of his call up. I thought he was going to be overmatched early, and he was. I think you're right about Marsh. I think defensively Marsh is more ready than Adell. I also think if you look at his walks, I think Marsh might be able to hold his own, and I think there is a better than 50% chance he might get called up before Adell does.
Yeah.
I just hope it's not in May.
Yeah. Do you have high long-term hopes for Adell? I mean, has his prospect star dimmed for you given his struggles last year?
No, he's still too young for me to have happen. I hold on to prospects since forever. I mean, I was still holding on to Jorge Solero when he hit his 48 home runs. I'd held him for like 5 years.
Yeah.
I think right now Adell will be fine, but I think he needs some time at AAA. I've watched him in spring training. I've seen him work counts. I've seen him in his real good at bats, and he's real impressive. I just think he needs some experience.
I'd agree with that. And yeah, I'm holding on to where I have him. Jared Walsh, he's been the good story for the Angels so far. Really fun story. Yep. Not in right field, but at first base. And in fact, his bat combined with his glove prompted a lot of this whole Pujols mess.
Yeah. I first saw Jared Walsh back in 2019 at spring training. It was my first glimpse of him. And this was back after he had made the big rush from low A to triple A and had first done anything of note. I think I have his stats here. He had 29 homers that year between 3 levels. And the Angels let him come to camp. He was 5 for 17 at that camp. And I wrote in a spring training trip, I said, I've watched him for a game. He has legitimate line-to-line power. He's willing to work counts. Smooth and athletic around first base. He left me impressed. And he's going to pitch mop-up. So how can you ignore this guy? Right now, I didn't know that he would turn into this player, but he was fascinating to watch because the thing that jumped out at me when I first saw him 3 years ago was how athletic he was. He's really athletic. He's got good hands, and he's just a good hitter.
And they just let him be a hitter. No more pitching nonsense with him. And, as much as they need pitching, they need his bat too.
Yeah, indeed. They do.
Yeah. He's been the positive story. Now, where is help coming for the Angels? How can this team get better?
Well, you've got the outfielders. They definitely have a glut of outfielders. That's an embarrassment of riches. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a trade. The problem is that the real talent in their organization is much further away, and it's a lot of high upside toolsy kind of players with very low floors too. If they don't develop, it's my impression from reading reports and looking at some of the players, the system has improved a little bit in the last year. But if you look at the Angel system for the past 6-7 years, the real takeaway is really the crummy retread bullpen right now. You've got other organizations that have all kinds of 2-pitch iffy starting pitchers with iffy command they can bring up. The Angels never seem to have any of those guys, and they go after Steve Cishek and
right before the season started too. I mean,
and they just. When they lose a player, for instance, they lost Max Stassi at catcher. They don't have anybody coming up through the system that can compensate. There's always seems to be big holes. They don't have a lot of depth, so I'm still really pessimistic in the short term. I think the offense is going to be going to next year. Let's say Trout is fine and Adele and Marsh have developed and they're up. Offense is going to be fine. I'm sure Artie's going to spend big bucks on one of the shortstops that comes up. But where's the pitching coming from? I still don't see the number 1, number 2, number 3 starters that clearly, and they don't have that in the organization. So I don't see it right now.
I think they were, if I recall correctly, they were in on the bidding for Cole a couple of years ago, but it fell short. I didn't hear a whole lot of buzz about them going after Trevor Bauer, but that was also because of Callaway a little bit at the time.
Yeah, it was definitely because of Callaway, that part of it.
That's a gift that keeps on giving too.
Yeah, it sure is. I don't know what to say about that. Probably
there's not much to say. It's just it's standing behind him cost them a lot. And it's not.
Well, I'm not sure about standing behind as much as they're going to dot their I's and cross their T's because he's going to be dismissed and he's probably going to sue, and they want to make sure that everything is is above board. It's just it's one of those things.
I understand, but it had and who knows? They may not have gotten Bauer anyhow, but still seeing him across town, or not across town, but up in LA, doing what he's doing has got to be a little bit extra painful too.
Yeah. The organization as a whole does not have a good reputation. Obviously, I'm not sure why a starting pitcher would want to come here. Mike Trout really loves where he lives in Laguna. I know he loves watching the weather like I do, and the rest of us in Southern California, and all the little differences, that we have. He resigned here. I know Billy Epler had a lot to do with that. I know Epler had a lot to do with bringing in Itani. They had a pretty good relationship when Itani was playing in Japan. I don't know how they get starting pitchers here because they're not developing them. They're going to have to. Artie's not just going to have to spend money on a shortstop. He's going to have to spend for a consistently good number one, number two starting pitcher for them to have a decent chance next year as well.
And perhaps a staff that develops pitchers better too, and spare no expense in finding that. Maybe that's the problem.
Yep.
We're going to talk a little bit more about what Jock does for Baseball HQ, what sort of leagues he plays in. But before that, quick note from our friends over at Vivid Seats. The world is coming back and the NFL season is upon us. I don't know about you, but I'm pumped for the recently released regular season schedule. If you're like me and you're looking to see action live, then head on over to Vivid Seats, the ultimate go-to source for live events. From the baseball concerts and games to the hottest theater and comedy shows, Vivid Seats makes it easy for you to discover your favorite event, find your seat, gain entry, and make new memories. Just download the app, choose your city, and get access to the largest selection of tickets on the games and performances you love, including the NFL, MLB, NBA, and more. For a limited time, Vivid Seats is giving our listeners 10% off your ticket, up to $30 max. Just use the promo code RotoWire when you check out. Every purchase is backed by its 100% buyer guarantee, and you'll even earn cash back with the Vivid Seats rewards program. Vivid Seats, getting you into the game. I'm Jeff Erickson. My guest is Jock Thompson from BaseballHQ.com. You can follow Jock, by the way, at Jock ATHQ, Jock at HQ. Believe it or not, very simple, very easy. Got some questions. We'll hit up. One about you, Ryan Bloomfield from Baseball HQ asks your top 3 tequilas.
I'm sorry, top 3 what?
Favorite tequilas.
Oh, top 3. Okay.
Totally off topic. Sorry, I'm slamming you with that there.
No, yeah. Well, Don Julio 1942 is my top tequila. I used to be able to get it before the pandemic when we were going to Mexico a lot. Used to get it very inexpensively there, and it tastes like candy. It's lovely, but since being on lockdown, believe it or not, I've been drinking Costco's Kirkland tequila, which is outstanding. It's become one of my favorites, and I'm sure part of it has to do with the price, but sure. It's just great. And we use the Kirkland tequila, or we use the Kirkland Silver to mix with our margaritas. So nice. Those are the 3 that I'm most familiar with right now.
Very good. Very good. Tell me more about how you got into fantasy. What type of games you like to play the best? And tell me the Jock Thompson story.
I started in fantasy back in 1989. It was a local California league. Started here in Orange County, organized by Rob Carroll, the late great Rob Carroll.
Yes.
And it was an AL only team. It was an AL only league. 12 teams. Started under Glenn Wagoner rules. We were using USA Today stats. That league is now over 30 years old. It's still going with most of the original members. My wife Sandy is now the commissioner. It's morphed into a keeper salary cap league with 20 owners, and it's mixed. It's not AL only, and daily lineup changes. I've got another primary league almost identical that we initiated from a 1990s ESPN chat room. Nice. With people like Stephen Nickrand and some other names you'd remember. Also deep mix league, pretty much identical. And the interesting thing to me is the daily lineup changes. We talked about a little bit of this on Twitter. I'm one of those daily lineup guys who, I love my teams. I love following just 1 or 2 teams, 1 or 2 fantasy teams. I'm not one of those guys who will play weekly and play in like 10 or 11 leagues. I could not play this format. What's that? Yeah.
Like me.
I'm sure you have a system. I don't have a system for it. I could not spend the time doing that. It's different strokes for different folks. This was the format I grew up in, and
right,
it's kind of how I play. Yeah.
I'm in 17 leagues. Now I have a couple of them that daily moves, but I have most of them are weekly. Now granted, a lot of them are industry leagues, Tout Wars, Labor, Yahoo Friends and Family. These are all industry leagues, but then I've really grown to love the NFBC format. I still got my home leagues that, started off my company, and we, it's like you just stick with it because they're great leagues. So sure. It's hard to pare down once because once you start to love a league, it's hard to step away from them.
Yeah, it's what you like. I mean, it is a little bit of an addiction. You get to know the owners and the people you play with, and one of the reasons I've never branched out from this is that I knew I wouldn't have time for it. And nowadays, when you get older, time becomes more important than it was previously, too.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm
Tout
feeling
Wars,
that. Go ahead, you were saying?
It's been interesting, the draft and hold. You kind of took me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And all there. I had an idea going in that I still think, based on the rules, was a good one, but it was terribly executed.
Oh, no.
really, really poorly. But again, the nice thing about keeper leagues is that I don't need a huge understanding of the entire player universe, just that you need in a draft from scratch league. I need to know my players, who's good, who I want to target, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of my story.
What was your strategy on draft and hold?
Oh, I was going to do a bullpen thing. I was going to punt, and I'll believe it or not, I was going to punt strikeouts and wins. I was going to go for ERA, saves, and ERA, whip, and saves, and go all offense. And as it is, I'm in 5th or 6th place, but that's so easy to do when I just punt nothing but, and just go for doing what I'm doing. And who knows, maybe I'll do a little bit better. But I did pretty much everything wrong. I thought the strategy was good, but I thought the execution was terrible.
Yeah. And you could be like John McKay. What do you think about the execution of my squad? I'm in favor of it. But
yeah, exactly.
But yeah. So keeper leagues are your favorite types, yes. I assume. And I like that. I like that. So you enjoy wheeling and dealing. Do you make a lot of trades during the season?
I don't. I get so attached to my teams and particularly the kids. The thing that I've really enjoyed, the thing I grew up doing in my early fantasy days was I was one of the first. I was probably the first person I know, except for Rob, who subscribed to Baseball America. And the way we would win our leagues is that we would go to Baseball America and find out who the best players were. We'd get Manny Ramirez early. We'd put him on reserve, and he'd come up and he would dominate. And I still like doing that. I like going to spring training. I love watching the kids play in spring training. I love watching them develop. And I still like doing that. In one of my leagues right now, I have Fernando Tatis, in one of the 20-team leagues. I have Fernando Tatis, Ronald Acuna, and Mike Trout, all of whom I've had since they were kids. So that's kind of the way I play.
Nice. That's awesome. When did you start writing for Baseball HQ?
It was back in 2000, and it was either 2003 or 2004. I'm not sure. So it's been a while.
And how did you start doing that?
Well, I had just left my job. I was a consultant. I wasn't getting that much work. I was a technical consultant. This was back in another life. And I had dabbled in the stock market. I'd lost my shirt with the tech crash, and I was trying to figure out, all right, what am I going to do next? My wife said, "Well, you're pretty good at this. You ought to subscribe to Baseball HQ and maybe see if you can get a job writing for them." And it's kept me busy. And it's been a blast.
Nice. And what do you do for HQ now?
Right now, I'm doing playing time columns, playing time today, playing time tomorrow. I also project innings and at bats. We do the best we can. It's obviously tough when you're covering teams like the Dodgers and the Angels. But that's kind of where I am right now with Baseball HQ. Excellent.
We got a question from the listeners here. LM asks, couple questions. Is it worth selling high on Jazz Chisholm? He's off to a really nice start with the Marlins. You look at what he's done. He's always been a prospect, but I think we didn't expect these sort of heights out of him. Would you try to sell high right now on Jazz Chisholm?
That's a context question. In a single year league, it's a valid question. I don't think it's a valid question in a keeper league because I like Jazz Chisholm. I think longer term he's going to be very good. He's going to steal bases. If you sell high, you're going to miss those stolen bases. I think based on his swing and miss issues, pitchers are probably going to get to him. But again, in this day and age, how bad is a 230 batting average?
Right.
If that's where it falls, right?
And that was the thing I checked out the other day. It's like the median batting average in the NFBC main event was 245. Like if you had a 250 hitter, he was actually helping you a a little bit, which is just crazy. It used to be like, oh, he's only a 250 hitter. Oh, that's kind of hurting us. I need someone that at least hits 265. No, 265 is great.
Yeah, exactly. Batting average doesn't bother me. Again, there's always, every single year, there's something. I mean, there's one stat where you've got to say, if you're competitive at all, you got to say, I'm going to finish middle of the pack. You got to go for this. There's something going on here, and stop worrying about that. There's nothing you can do about it. And batting average is one of those. Low batting averages this year don't concern me as much as they used to.
Yeah. And his follow-up question is, are you worried at all about Juan Soto? Now, Soto's hitting 287, which is pretty close to his 2019 numbers, but 4 homers, 15 RBI, 18 runs. Yeah, he missed some time. He had an IL trip, and the Nats lineup around him hasn't been very good. And so counting stats are down a little bit. I mean, I do worry a little bit about the Nats not being very good going forward, but I mean, the power's coming. I'm not really worried about Soto at all.
Agree. RBI wise, maybe team context is not as good as it used to be, but other than that, I'm not worried about Juan Soto.
I know he's slugging 436, so I know where that question's coming from. It's coming. It's coming. I don't think there's a whole lot else that I'm really that worried about here. So we'll see. Parting shots, anything? What would you like to see? What sort of trade would you like to see the Angels make this offseason or this summer? I'm sorry, not this offseason, but before the trade deadline. Is there a big sweeping move that they can pull off? Is there a tradable commodity even for the Angels? Is there something that they have extra of?
You could say outfielders. They could trade one of Marsh or Adele. I don't know what they would get for it. That's the only real strength they have. I actually wish the Angels would stop doing things like trading semi-busted prospects like Jahmai Jones for 1 year of Alex Cobb. I don't get that. I don't understand that stuff. But yeah, I think the Angels are between a rock and a hard place right now.
Yeah. I agree. And it's weird because they're a team with money. It's not like they're the Pirates. Even the Pirates have money, but choose not to spend it. It's a little different. But yeah, that's the thing that's so beguiling is they will spend money.
Yes.
They're just in this little cycle. That's the only
thing.
They
will spend money, but Artie Moreno Artie Moreno makes all the decisions, and that's where the problems start.
Yes.
I don't think Artie is hands off at all. I loved it when Artie came in. Obviously, you remember that.
Yep.
We were thrilled. He was taking Disney away from us, and we had some connections in the Angel organization. But boy, when you look at what's happened since he's been there and how this system has gone to hell, and how Eddie Bain got let go because of a personality conflict. I mean, good Lord. I mean, Eddie Bain brought in that great Mike Trout draft year, and that's gone. And what happened after that shouldn't be surprising, but it hasn't come back yet. So I keep waiting for it. I'm not sure it will.
I know you're going to hate this comparison, but Orioles fans were happy when Peter Angelos took over the team. And look where that's at.
Yeah.
Remember, he bought the team from an owner who wasn't spending a whole lot of money, and he poured some money in at first, and they even had, brought in Camden Yards and all that, and things were optimistic, and now look at them. So yeah.
If all you're doing is spending money, you're not gonna build a good organization. The problem with Artie is that my take is, and this is a little tough, but I've always felt that he looked at his GMs as errand boys to do what he wanted them to do what he wants them to do. And maybe it's not fair, but I just don't see the system that should be the systems that should have developed under previous GMs, and they keep leaving. So,
yeah, I think you're right about that. Well, hey, that's going to wrap up today's podcast. Jock, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, Jeff, it was. We'll do it again.
All right. Very good. For those of you who want to check out RotoWire, go to rotowire.com/try, get that free 10-day trial. We got Clay and Todd Zola with 2-star starters tomorrow. Thanks again for listening to RotoWire. Have a great day.